On top of that, yes, I'm gonna be a plant rights activist. We know that plants are alive. Last week there was a new study conducted that showed that plants even scream when you try to hurt them. Happens to trees, happens to tomatoes, happens to cucumbers. So how can we know that there is no suffering? Yet again, question over question, but all of it doesn't matter. You have no moral baseline, you want to kill babies, who cares about your position? Nobody.
Vegan pro-choice positions you can have. Again, I'm sure
He's so feminine, he's so feminine, he's so feminine.
Hairline. All right, what is up, guys? So got a new setup going. It's not fully done. I need to figure out a way to, block out some of the sunlight so the LEDs in the back are a bit more amplified. But anyway, we have a new video that Bobby's Perspective made in response to my video where I covered abortion. So before we go into Bobby's Perspective's very, cringy response, I just want to cover what kind of a person Bobby's Perspective really is. So Bobby's Perspective, like many anti-vegans, used to be a vegan. And then, in some sense, he struggled with the vegan diet and then became an anti-vegan and somehow gained a community of people who decide to make it sort of like their life mission to take a shit on vegans. And you'll see that that is the majority of his audience. So Bobby's Perspective actually posted a transformation picture that was meant to, make veganism look bad, where he showed his physique looking rather malnourished when he was a vegan, and then showing his physique where he looked a little bit more jacked and was eating meat. So I have the post here on the screen, and just so you know, when Bobby was a vegan, he posted pictures of him looking rather jacked and forgot to take these pictures down in his post trying to make veganism look bad and show that, he was super malnourished as a vegan and then was super jacked as a meat eater. So I posted it on Instagram, and as you can see here on the left was a separate post where it was like vegan and meat, and as you can see, he's like kind of malnourished on the left and then super jacked on the right. And then on the right is a separate picture when he was a vegan and he was trying to appeal to the vegan audience and was showing that he is jacked while eating plants. So in my Instagram caption making this post, you'll see that I said something like, if you're going to start trying to depict the fact that vegan diets are inadequate for muscle gain, at least delete the pictures on your Instagram from when you were vegan and were making muscle gains. So obviously this is just very dishonest of Bobby, and he kind of screwed himself by not really, keeping track of his bullshit. And yeah, this really just shows he's really nothing but an anti-vegan ideologue who is just trying to appeal to an anti-vegan audience. So now that I've poisoned the well a little bit, let's go into his actual response to my video.
Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're new, my name is Bobby. Guys, today we're gonna check out vegan lifting logic.
So as we can see, guys, we are about 40 seconds into the video and Bobby's Perspective has already made an error. He has called me vegan lifting logic.
Vegan lifting logic.
When in reality, my name is lifting vegan logic. So great start to the video, Bobby. Let's keep going.
But look, I'm gonna tell you, it's like, I don't wanna make people think that I don't understand the inconsistencies on the pro-choice side, because look, there's a lot of people who are pro-choice and they're vegan, right? And it's like, you see, look, good. I'm glad I got the laugh out of that that I need. But it's like
the potential for life. It's okay to end the potential for life, but not your animals. Don't you dare touch those animals.
And I'm like, yo, how does this happen?
It happens because veganism is rooted in nihilism and atheism. Pro-choice is the next logical step. Logical.
So veganism is not rooted in nihilism or atheism. It's just simply rooted in, wanting to reduce animal suffering, wanting to not view animals as property, as commodities. In no way is atheism or agnosticism a necessary entailment of being a vegan, nor is being a nihilist. There's plenty of, Christian vegans out there. It's very much possible to be a Christian or a Muslim or a Jew and still, hold the belief, the very basic belief, that animal abuse should be avoided. Hey, what is up, guys? So a very common right-wing talking point against vegans is that, vegans are hypocrites because they're so vehemently against the suffering and death of animals, but aren't pro-life. Basically, the idea...
Not only are they hypocrites, which they are, but their ideology is based on Disney and doesn't make any sense. If you're an atheist, if you're a Darwinist, if a baby in the womb has no intrinsic value because it is not sentient yet, why do you care for eggs? Why do you care for shrimp? Why do you care even for animals? If you base your worldview on evolution, why does it matter?
Why?
There is no God. Morals are relative. But don't eat the animals.
What is the actual problem with vegans placing moral value on beings once they become sentient? It's a position that is very easy to be consistent on. And also, Bobby said that, vegans are hypocritical, didn't really, give an argument as to why we're hypocritical. This is something that you'll see a lot of anti-vegans do, where they just kind of claim that we are hypocrites without actually going into, our normative ethical theory and show, what values we are violating or, contradicting in our actions compared to our values. So yeah, really not really any argument that was given to justify the claim that vegans are hypocrites. He also said like, oh, if you care about sentience, then why do you care about, not consuming eggs? And I mean, you'd think someone who used to be vegan would understand the amount of suffering that goes into the production of eggs, and also the male baby chicks that are ground up alive in order for eggs to be produced, because male chicks are, useless to the egg industry, and those male chicks are sentient. Bobby also takes a shot at vegans who don't believe in God and who are rather agnostic and, maybe identify as subjectivists, or people who don't really derive their morality from a sort of objective source, while, people like Bobby do, and their objective source being like God or whatever. It's perfectly possible for somebody to have a set of morals that are based in their preferences, and these sets of preferences can be adhered to in a logically consistent fashion, and therefore you can have a moral system which makes sense. Now, he's starting to remind me at this point of the whole Christian presuppositionalism stuff that I had to, argue with Primal Edge Health on in the past. If you're not too familiar with what Christian presuppositional ethics is, it's basically the idea that the only grounded moral system you can have is one that is under the Christian faith. And these Christian presuppositionalists like to pretend like at the bottom of their moral system, they're not also making an assumption that, say, God exists, okay? And they're trying to make the point that, oh, if you don't have like a source for your knowledge or your, your worldview, then how can you actually have a grounded moral system? So they just act like they do. They act like God is the grounder of all their morals. But when you really think about it, these people are also making a baseless assumption at the root of their worldview, which is that God even exists, or even if they had, a self-revelatory experience where they experienced God, that these senses that led them to experience the revelation also weren't, the product of deceit and trusting their senses overall. So the point here is that vegan agnostics and atheists and Christian presuppositionalists have to make an assumption at the bottom of their worldview. And therefore, these people have just as much of a grounded moral system as, say, agnostic vegans or atheists in general.
Why do you care for shrimp?
And with his question on shrimp, I mean, shrimp is sentient, so I don't know why he'd even bring that up as a sort of reductio of like, oh, you care about sentience, and how do you care about shrimp? Well, shrimp is sentient, so I don't know what the point is.
This video was actually partially inspired by this meme that I've been sent from multiple people, which in my opinion fails on so many levels. The objective of the meme is to show that vegans are inconsistent for thinking that eating eggs is wrong because it, quote unquote, kills a baby chicken, while simultaneously not thinking that an unborn fetus being aborted is quote unquote killing a baby. I say this fails on so many levels because number one, the commercially sold eggs that vegans oppose eating aren't even fertilized, so I'm not even sure how a vegan could consider eating an unfertilized egg to be killing and eating a baby. And honestly, I've never even heard of a vegan who thinks that commercially sold eggs are fertilized. Number two, vegans oppose
yeah, exactly. That's the point. Fertilization versus no fertilization. It's actually not fertilized, so it's not the same. Man, the point is, you don't want to eat an egg because you don't want to harm a life. In this case, a chicken's life. No matter if we're talking about an unfertilized egg that has no potential for further life, then you will talk about the male chicks that are slaughtered before they're 1 day old. Right? So ultimately, you imply that eating one egg will cause some sort of violence to a chicken. So people call you out and ask, why do you care about a chicken's life and not a human's life? That's it.
Okay, just to be clear, guys, I don't even put my position out here in this video. It's more of me going over logically consistent positions that vegans can take that are, partially pro-choice or whatever. So for a vegan who does think that killing a fetus is ethical so long as they're not sentient, that vegan isn't a hypocrite for thinking that it's wrong to consume an egg, because consuming those eggs entail sentient male baby chicks being ground up alive and sentient chickens being exploited and, suffering for the production of those eggs. So it's perfectly reasonable for a vegan who cares about sentience to not really care about the moral value of a non-sentient fetus while caring about people consuming eggs because consuming eggs actually affects the suffering of sentient chickens.
I love this picture here. It states everything you need to know about veganism. Veganism and abortion go hand in hand because it is an anti-human movement.
Now, I've heard this claim from the anti-vegan community many times that, the vegan moral philosophy and the vegan movement is anti-human, but there's nothing really entailed by the vegan moral philosophy that is anti-human. We're just humans committing senseless violence to sentient life that is non-human. We don't think that people should have the right to go out of their way to inflict animal abuse on animals. It's fairly simple. It's not being anti-human. It's just saying hey, we should avoid animal abuse.
But yet again, my question to you vegans is, if a unborn child has no intrinsic value, why should anybody care about not eating animals?
You can make the claim that a baby has intrinsic moral value once it achieves sentience, and also claim that animals should not be murdered and exploited and killed and suffer partially because they're sentient. There's not really any confliction here. You can acknowledge that a fetus gains moral value upon obtaining sentience, while also saying that sentient animals ought to be treated fairly when it comes to morality.
And furthermore, why should you? If a baby doesn't matter, why does anything matter at all? Yet again, your atheistic worldview does not allow a moral origin, some sort of universal morals, universal ethics, and this is why, essentially, anything goes. So you're not really basing your life on your ideology. Your ideology essentially allows everything. There is no afterlife, there is no consequence, there is no, yet again, universal moral truth. Why do you care? You could go out, punch cows in the face, kill people, rape everybody. Why do you care? Where do your vegan ethics fit in Darwinism? They don't.
So this is just more of the Christian presuppositionalism talking points, asking, how do you, get your morals, and trying to point to the absurdity of being a subjectivist and thinking that, people have their own subjective morals. And listen, I understand that it's very hard to come to terms with the fact that, morals are subjective and people have their own subjective morals. I wish there was evidence for objective morality so I can, make an objective kind of argument trying to tell people why they should be vegan. But unfortunately, I don't see any evidence to support the existence of objective morality. It just doesn't really make sense to me. The whole Christian precept stuff really does make me cringe, because if you hear it in Bobby's voice, he really is convinced that, he has an objective, universal moral system and it's derived from God, when in reality, it's actually subjective, what people call their objective source of morality. He's calling his, the Christian religion or whatever he subscribes to. People that are Muslim who claim moral objectivity do it with with Islam, and people who are Jewish who claim objective morality do it with Judaism. So these people don't really realize it, but they are in fact just operating in a way where they are having a sort of subjective sense of an objective source of morality. And also, I would just say that God himself is technically a subject, and if you're gaining your morality from a subject, you are in a sense still subscribing to the concept of subjective morality. It's just that you are not the subject the morality is becoming obtained from.
Alright, then let me give you another stance. I'm not gonna blame you on loving abortion. We all know you do, but I'm gonna play devil's advocate. I'm gonna take your worldview, your Darwinistic worldview, and I'm gonna say I'm top of the food chain. There is no afterlife, there is no God that judges me, so why would I care? I love meat, it is healthy, tastes delicious, I don't care for your cows.
Yeah, so Bobby's trying to get me to convince him to go vegan in a way that doesn't involve, Christian precept reasoning and things like that. Now, of course, a person can, within their own subjective morals, have no actual reason to be vegan. This is true, and this applies to killing human beings too. Somebody could just find it moral to go ahead and murder people, and I can try my best to convince them to, change their ethics or, just reflect and refine the way they view the world. But in the end, there's certain people that have their own beliefs and I can't shake them. And of course, this is when things like force get involved. If a person really just thinks that it's totally morally okay to go and kill people, then we have to exercise our force and kind of impose our subjective morality on them in the interest of other people.
You see that this embryo already has all the potential to be a grown-up human being. Everything is stored within it, and the human soul is already formed. You are killing a baby. Don't get it twisted. No matter how much intellectualism you infuse here, yet again, you are killing a human baby. Just because you've been indoctrinated into believing that you need a certain brain size in order to be sentient, and then it's an absolute no-go to kill that being.
It's definitely not a matter of indoctrination to think or believe that at a certain point sentience develops. I mean, that's more of an objective fact. It's not like you're being brainwashed into having a false belief. You can understand the actual neuroscience that leads to the conclusion that at this point in time, a fetus develops sentience. So the claim that this is a product of indoctrination, I don't really understand. And this kind of has the vibe of like that we're being victim of propaganda, or like science being propaganda. I'm not really sure what this means.
On top of that, yes, I'm gonna be a plant rights activist. We know that plants are alive. Last week there was a new study conducted that showed that plants even scream when you try to hurt them. Happens to trees, happens to tomatoes, happens to cucumbers. So how can we know that there is no suffering? Yet again, question over question, but all of it doesn't matter. You have no moral baseline, you want to kill babies, who cares about your position? Nobody.
All right, so we have Bobby coming in hot with the plants' rights activism. Yes, we know that plants are alive, but there really isn't much reason to believe that they actually experience subjectively and are sentient. Now, I haven't looked at the actual study yet, so give me some time and I'll look at it real quick and we'll see if what he actually posted demonstrates that plants are sentient. Okay, yeah, so I'm taking a look at this article. There's no actual study cited. They even said that the study, which was done in Tel Aviv, hasn't even been published yet. And if you read the article, all you can really see here is stuff about the plants making noises. Now, making noises is not in any way indicative of being sentient or having a subjective experience. This is just more evidence of plant intelligence, which is not necessarily the same thing as plant sentience. If you even read the bottom of the article, it says, plants may be making noises when they are stressed, but it doesn't sound like the plants know what's happening. Okay, so this is just more evidence that Bobby is just an anti-vegan ideologue, and honestly didn't even read this article to begin with to read that endpoint that honestly just refutes the idea that the plants are even able to sense anything. Moving on. Vegan pro-choice positions you can have. Again, I'm sure.
He's so feminine. He's so feminine. He's so feminine.
Hairline.
And I'd be like, so what is your justification for, paying for innocent animals to be murdered for taste pleasure?
Innocent animals murdered for taste pleasure. Wrong, wrong, wrong. How do you determine that they're innocent? Based on what? How do you classify it as murder? Murder only happens when a human is killed. And taste pleasure. By now, if you really look into the science, then you must have found out that the human physiology requires animal foods in order to be perfectly healthy.
Okay, so we know animals are innocent by just looking at the definition of the word innocent and then looking at animals. It's pretty clear that they're innocent. And yes, animals are murdered. There are definitions of the word murder which apply to what we do to animals. And as per usual, Bobby supplies zero scientific data to support the claim that human beings require animal products to be perfectly healthy. All right, guys, so I'm not going to finish this video because there's just too many times where he's making these unsubstantiated claims and just going on these random rants and saying things that don't even apply to what I'm saying in my video. So just to be clear, Bobby is coming from a position of, Christian presuppositional apologetics, where he thinks that, he has a grounded moral system in that his moral system is grounded in God, whereas people like me who are agnostic and atheist have a more secular moral position, a subjective moral position, a subjectivist, moral position, where we think that, our morality kind of just comes from our preferences and there's not really any sort of universal right and wrong. And he likes to pretend that, his moral system is objective and it's universal, when in reality, as we know, it's pretty much subjective, what people call their objective source of morality. And he is no different from a moral subjectivist in that he is just picking and choosing what he likes to choose as his source of morality. This is the cringe that is Christian presuppositional apologetics. And if you want to see a video I did really going more into depth as to how absurd this kind of thinking is, I'll link it in the description below, where I cover Primal Edge Health and his attempt at trying to show vegans are absurd because we don't have a sort of a universal moral system based in objective morality or God. All right, guys, that is the end of the video. I hope you enjoy the new setup. I still have to figure out some things like with lighting and things like that. But yeah, I'm really excited to have this new setup. I'm going to be streaming a lot more and doing, you know, debates and stuff. And yeah, so I'll see you guys in the next video.
Dude, even vegans don't get your weird, stupid wannabe sense of irony here. Who is your audience? Nobody gets these dumb jokes. Dude, even vegans don't get your weird,